So yeah, you're talking about it being scary or not being scary. And I think there's that bit around us just being with ourselves that is very scary, actually.
Really scary, yeah.
And I remember, so I've just done a class with you this evening. First class I've done in ages. Mm-hmm. And there was a time when actually the quiet and the stillness of being with yourself was too much for me.
Yeah.
And what would you say to that?
I would say that is incredibly common.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that that's not, if you are like that, that's not a defect. It's not that there's something wrong. It's not that you're not doing it properly.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say just the way that we as teachers have to meet people where they are, you have to meet yourself where you are as well.
Yeah.
So, if you're not ready to sit in silence, have some music on. Mm-hmm. If you're not ready to have a 45-minute meditation, do a 5-minute meditation, do some mindfulness, go to a Zumba class.
Yeah.
Like, if you're not ready for it, that's absolutely fine. We'll be here when you are.
I like that.
And I just think that, because I know in my life, sometimes I'll do a meditation and it'll be dead easy. I'll just be able to sit. I don't know why I said that. I think maybe once I've ever done a meditation and it's been easy. I find meditating really hard. And having that compassion for yourself that but you do meditation, so yes, you'll know this, that we have a very strict idea of what a good practice looks like.
Yes.
And actually, no, your practice is meeting yourself where what you need that day. So it might be, actually what I need to do is put on my favourite song and do the dishes and dance. And because actually it can be really triggering for people.
Yeah.
It can be really triggering, especially if there's no distraction, because we do distract ourselves from our own thoughts all of the time. And for a lot of people, that's for good reason.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's not necessary. People say, stay with your thoughts. That can actually be really, really frightening for people if people are traumatized. And that's why I always try to be quite sensitive with that. Obviously, you don't know what's going to trigger someone, so you can't say I have no triggers in my class, because you don't know what's going to trigger everyone. But I always, whenever I turn the lights, I'll say I'm going to turn the lights off now. I try and keep the music on. I might right at the end turn the music off for a second, because then you're going on I think with yoga it's like, I think of yoga as being a transition between conscious states, which sounds really
sounds
wanky.
A bit hippie.
That sounds really wanky, but we all have different conscious states, don't we? Like, I'm sure if you've gone on holiday, you all know that feeling of in the first 2 days of being on holiday where you can't relax.
Oh yes.
So because you're it's still in your work conscious state, and then by the end of it, you can sit and have a cup of tea and look at the lovely lake of where you are, and you can sit and enjoy yourself. But it takes that time, and we tend to live in only one conscious state, and we do this with like our central nervous system. We've got the flight or fight, we've got the rest and digest. This is yoga for me, is about learning what the different, like, maybe conscious states is a hippie way of saying it, but maybe mood is a better one. So it's learning how to kind of shift, because sometimes your brain, even though we've only got one brain, we've actually got loads of different ways our brains are.
Yes, and they're often very much contradictory.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think sometimes you can feel like when you're in one state, you feel like you've always been in that state.
Oh yes.
And you've never not
It's going to be like this forever.
And I think people are often looking for a way to fix themselves.
Yeah.
So what they want is to flip on the nice state and be in that forever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what can happen is that that's not what yoga's going to do.
Yeah.
That's not, like, yoga isn't going, like, at the end of the day, we're bending over and breathing, like, doing a couple of downward facing dogs isn't.
That's not going to fix me.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry.
Right.
But I suppose it also depends on your definition of being fixed.
Yeah.
Doesn't it? Because no, it's not you're not it's not going to make you in that blissed out, totally fine state all the time, but you couldn't live like that anyway.
Yeah.
But what it can do is it'd be insufferable if you're in that state all the time. But what it can do is it can teach you about your different states, so you're not as frightened of them, because you then know that it's temporary, and you can maybe learn how to switch, what the things to do in order to switch between them.
So this is emotional regulation and distress tolerance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant.
And what you can do as well, so you might not have control over your emotions, you might not have control over your thoughts, but you have control over, some people sometimes have control over some things.
Yes.
So we can, it's learning the things that comfort us, the things, and dedicating time to those things, because it's really easy to think that you do more than you do, like to think you do a lot of self-soothing, and actually you don't.
No, we do hitting ourselves with sticks, maybe, don't we?
Yeah, we do. And even as a teacher, like I was having a conversation with someone just this afternoon actually about how when we go through stressful things, we can not even notice how stressful they are until afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about the pandemic, and this person was saying that the pandemic hadn't been that stressful. And he was saying that he was having physical symptoms of anxiety, but he didn't think it was anxiety that was causing them.
Yeah.
And I said, oh, and he was saying because he doesn't think there's anything anxiety provoking going on in his life. And I was like, hello? And it's interesting because that happened to me recently as well, where I was having physical symptoms of anxiety. And I think because I'm a yoga teacher, I almost didn't want to admit that it was anxiety, because I was like, but I'm a yoga teacher, and how can I have anxiety? And like, I almost didn't allow myself. And that, I think that's such a big thing, of allowing yourself to have those emotions too.
But this is also like the pressure, isn't it? Other people, I imagine, will look at you and think, well, she's a yoga teacher, she must be sorted.
I don't think that, maybe if they look twice, they wouldn't.
But do you know what I mean? Yeah. There's almost like this image of, people who do yoga have got, a certain air about them. And
well, that's because it's been sold as an aspirational lifestyle.
Exactly.
So it's been sold because it's become murky and twisted with marketing. And the images of yoga we have now are very, very similar to the images that we've always been sold to make ourselves feel crap about ourselves, so we buy something.
Yeah.
They're bendy, thin women on beaches in not much clothing. And it's like, but now instead of buying Calvin Klein one, we have to buy a maca smoothie from wherever. And it's that aspirational thing. It's difficult because I try and be as honest as I can in my communications about yoga, because the aspiration is, like we were saying right at the beginning, it's not the goal, it's the path.
Yeah.
So that's being sold a goal.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm like, but it's also the path.
And I think people can sometimes miss the point. And, I quoted this to you earlier, that one of the things that you've said, I don't know if you've said it many times, but it just really sticks in my mind, being able to touch your toes doesn't make you a better person.
Oh yeah, I know loads of people who can touch their toes that are dickhead.
and it's true though, isn't it? But we kind of get really caught up in this idea of, I'm going to go to this class, I'm going to touch my toes, I'm going to get super bendy, and that's what it's about.
But that's because we've internalized, ableist ideas of what the ideal person is in our society. And so we're always trying to get that. And I think that's something I really try and disconnect from my classes. And it's hard because I've been brought up in that society too. Yep. So it's not as if I can say, well, I'm above it, because I'm totally not. But having that place where you can, for lots and lots of people, and this is one of the things that I loved about yoga, was I had never experienced my body as my body before I started doing yoga. Mm-hmm. it was like, I always thought of my body as like something to be tamed.
Okay.
Like it was like something that it wasn't quite right and I needed to tame it, and if it was just a bit thinner, and if it was just a bit this and it was just a bit that, then maybe like I could live and it wasn't me. Does that make sense?
Well, it's because we're told what women should look like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was like, it's such a simple thing, but when I had the realization that my body was me, and if I'm unkind to my body, then I'm being unkind to me, I was like, oh, and it was totally life-changing, but it's such a simple thing. And I think that sometimes the thing that you do can be the same, but it's the intention that you bring behind it.
Definitely.
So exercise can be the most loving thing you can do for yourself, or it can be a form of self-harm.
Definitely.
And when we live in a world where we're getting these messages, and like I said earlier, you know, we are coming into a room, everyone's in their sports kits. It's difficult to take out that part of the experience, but it's really important that we do.